Oh yeah, there's the red dot.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Educational Affairs Committee to order. We'll begin this meeting with a board roll call. I will begin with Mr. Epps. Zachary Epps, present. Dr. Wise.
Oh, sorry, Carolyn Wise. Present.
Charles Burdell Williams, present.
Leah Mulhern, present. Robin Murphy, present.
Mia Blitzstein, present. Jennifer Lemon, present.
Ross Whiting, present. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the last meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. At this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Girman. Thank you, Ms. Girman.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. So we have a committee meeting today in conjunction with our administration from the high school, talking about a couple of the new things that we are thinking about at the high school, as well as some updates about where we are. So as always, our chairs.
And I figured I'd start this. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Mark Hoff. I'm one of the vice principals of the high school. We start all of our meetings with our essence, belonging, becoming, excelling. Our diversity gives us strength, but our essence defines our purpose. Our why is what connects us physically and emotionally to a greater good. Cheltenham School District is driven to provide a place where all belong, students, families, staff, community, and where all can become the greatest visions of themselves.
We have a lovely picture of our CSOs, one of whom is here tonight, who's going to be talking with you about one of our courses.
And then our mission and vision. The mission of the Cheltenham School District is to provide inspiration and resources to every student and achieve academic excellence and pursue their highest potential by creating an equitable and inclusive community that fosters social and emotional well-being and a passion for learning. In our vision, belong, engage, seek justice. Cheltenham School District is a community where all students know they belong, engage, and excel in their learning experience, and are prepared to act as champions of social justice.
So we're going to do a piece of our 7 strategic pillars. This is in our teaching and learning platform and a little bit in our portrait of a graduate platform as well. So our 3 areas we're going to talk about first tonight is Panther Paths, which is part of our pathways proposal. Then there'll be some new course proposals, and then course enrollment overview with Dr. Hammond. So one of the things we've talked to you about quite a bit is we've been looking at how we can create a pathways program. One of the things that we talked about pretty quickly was you have pathways from the state that are Act 158, and then we talked about pathways, which would be a different thing, and that terminology is confusing. So we decided to call it Panther Paths. So you still keep some of that idea. There's plenty of space for play on words and marketing and that sort of thing. But the thought process is, as we've talked about a little bit already, is we have a very sort of traditional path that a lot of our students follow when they go through high school, but it's not all required, but sometimes we roster them as if it's required. And the hope with creating these paths is instead getting students to think about the huge variety of courses that we have at the high school, hoping to increase enrollment in a lot of those other courses, and also getting them into places that they're really interested in, whether it be about their career or their thought processes or just a genuine interest. It's not about tracking or limiting their choice. The hope is to expand it out and to bring some coherence to our course selection in some of the places where there's maybe bits of confusion about what's truly required versus what we kind of feel like might be required. And then again, to disrupt the default scheduling pattern where students all take these same set of courses. And then the last piece is we're hoping to add the portrait of a graduate work, which will be wrapping up this month and into next month. We want to be able to align some of what we learned through there with some of those transferable skills into those paths as well.
And so here's what we've done to date, our how. So in conjunction with AI, to be transparent, we reviewed our course offerings and developed a series of possible pathways based on what we offer and what's popular to students. So we thought about, the different career concepts and all that our students are looking at. We looked at what naturally fits within our programming guide, and we try to put them into groups that would make sense. We reviewed this with the Office of Education, with members of the high school administration. We also reviewed this with the high school department chairs. Both Ms. Girman and I sat down with them and worked through things. They had the ability to provide feedback, both as a group and individually. Upcoming, and why we wanted to discuss this tonight, we are, that portion of the graduate is going to lead this process. And so once that's finalized, we're going to be able to integrate that, the Panther Pathways, college and career readiness standards, Act 115-8, all into a organized program. Once that's done, we're going to create workshops with high school staff and students for implementation. And our anticipation is that students will pick their path. The current 8th graders, the class of 2030, will be the ones that will be the first one in Pathways. The overall vision currently is that students will have our freshman academy experience as 9th graders. And then as part of that academy program, we're going to talk about these paths so that when they're entering their sophomore year scheduling, they're going to be kind of selecting that, way forward for themselves. And so we're going to present 2 different visions of what this could look like. The first one is what you would normally see in a paths program. And this is a career-based one. So when we looked at our course selection guide, the courses that we currently offer, we talked to our department chairs and other stakeholders. We came up with five general paths. STEM and innovation for students interested in engineering, health sciences, applied math, or computer science. Global citizenship for students interested in sustainability, international development, public service, community leadership, environmental or humanitarian work. Creative and performing arts for students interested in music, theater, visual arts, media production, writing, or digital design. Humanities and social justice for students interested in education, policy, journalism, law, psychology, history, or social advocacy. And then business and entrepreneurship for students interested in business ownership, marketing, finance, management, or digital commerce. We found space throughout our program for these paths to kind of evolve, and space where we've been naturally talking about additional programming that we could be doing at the high school that would fit into these career-oriented paths. So this probably looks like, oh, I totally get that. And now for a different way that we can look at this.
So I started thinking about what this could look like in a different way. I think that we've all seen in different schools the career trajectory, and that for a lot of students, it's college or career as if those are disparate things. When in fact, we all ideally eventually go on to a career post-college, but we talk about them as if they were these 2 separate things. And we started thinking instead about what would this look like in a different way that didn't feel like it was so heavily career focused, that it started thinking about the way that students think, or the way that they learn, or the way that they are interested in things that doesn't have to be so heavily focused on a career. Because one of the things that we hear from high school students often is this feeling that you want me to pick what I'm going to be when I grow up, but I don't know. And then as adults, we also know I'm important. I don't necessarily know what I want to be when I grow up either. I mean, I do, but sometimes. And I think it creates a different kind of look for it. And so I will own that I called Mark and I was like, I have an idea. And he's like, okay. And then there was this long pause. Bear with me. And so we started playing with this idea of what these could look like, and that they become more about passion points for students and not necessarily about careers, though careers still fit. So having students think about, are you an innovator? Are you an advocate? Are you an explorer? Are you a storyteller? Are you an analyst? Because one of the things that we started to worry about a little bit is if you have students feel like they have to pick a career-based pathway, what if they're interested in more than one thing? Then what do we do? And we don't want it to become a thing where students are locked in. You can only take these set of classes, because we have a great variety and we have lots of kids who have overlap. And so the thought was, if we don't make it focused on career, but it still fits, there's places here for overlap with students where they could pick a couple of different mindsets or a couple of different ways of existing. And that creates a little bit more space and may feel a little bit more natural for them when they're in high school in terms of how they operate. And so again, we left the pieces around work, but we also talked about what are the things that you like to do. So the innovator might be a student who enjoys designing, building, experimenting, creating solutions. Advocate, a student who cares about justice, community voice, and making a positive impact. Students who are curious as explorers about the world and how the systems connect. Storytellers, students who communicate, express, or create through language, art, or performance. And then the analyst, students who enjoy logic, pattern, structure, and data-driven thinking. The hope is that could, and we're going to play with it, create a little bit more space for exploration for students than maybe feeling like they have to be married to a career when they're starting 10th grade. They could be. So we have two options that we're going to kind of play with. The other piece of what we're talking about is trying to tighten up the course requirements and make really explicit what is actually required. The way that we've been operating has been students have to take English 9 through English 12. Students have to take US history through government. Students have to take algebra through at least algebra 2 in a lot of instances. They have to take biology and then chemistry and then maybe physics. Things start to get a little bit muddy. And what we found is that when we have students who are maybe transferring in from other places, they have this non-traditional sort of pathway or set of courses, the conversation becomes, what are they actually required to take? When you go back into the text, you can see that there is some discrepancy in terms of what they are actually course-wise required to take versus number of credits. And so we're trying to make sure that we are really purposeful about what is actually required and where are we okay with flexibility for students. So this is our current proposal. It's essentially 2 courses for each content area that are required. And then that leaves 2+ credits in most of the course areas for flexibility. So English 9 and 10, the thought process was English 10 is the Keystone Trigger course. So asking them to take both the course prior to it and the Keystone Trigger course are required. Algebra 1 and geometry, there is some room for debate about this, both within the math department and then in the high school as well, in terms of whether or not geometry would be required, depending on who you ask, you get different answers, but this is where we are right now. Environmental science and biology, part of our proposal also is moving environmental science to from an optional course to a required course and moving it to 9th grade. That is part of the STEELS alignment. The STEELS standards have environmental sustainability as a huge part of it. And right now with our current requirements, students aren't required to take environmental science. And so the other piece of that is there are some components of biology that would build really well off of environmental science. And so the thought was moving it into 9th grade will give some space for those students who are taking biology next, have learned about ecology and some of the evolution in environmental science. And then it gives a little bit more space in biology to learn that content with more depth instead of feeling a little bit like it's a rat race. US history and world history, government would still be required because of the civics requirement. And then health, phys ed, and financial literacy, that becomes 2026 requirement, financial literacy.
Yes.
And then the ones that have asterisks are our Keystone Trigger courses. Do I keep going or do you have any questions?
Questions from the board?
Okay.
Lovely.
The last slide, thank you for this, by the way. This is very interesting and really a lot to think about. It's really interesting. The last slide, the required courses, would it still mean that students would still have to take 4 credits of English or what? But
We're not touching the credits yet.
okay, okay.
So we had started talking about it
Right.
at the policy meeting, and maybe moving some of that around, but this is just about naming the course requirements, not changing credit requirements.
We're very much focused on what common experience we want all students to have, and then what can the paths provide within the additional graduation requirements that are there.
Ms. Blitzky.
Thank you.
This is great. I'm excited about both sort of avenues of looking at it and perspectives. I have a few questions. One is if a student doesn't feel connected to any of the sort of like identifiers, are there some tools like a diagnostic tool, for example, for them to use to say like, do you prefer this or prefer that, to help them sort of figure out what they might be good at, what kinds of areas would be worth exploring for them?
Yeah, we talked about doing exactly that with the guidance department. So initially, when we were just going to do career, it felt like something that we could move forward with really quickly. And then we started thinking about what are the places where we could expand a little bit more, and especially some of the feedback that we've gotten from students about portrait of a graduate has been really interesting. One of the things that we talked about for guidance counselors is prior to them having their meetings with students, having students take a survey, they give them that. So if students don't have an answer when they come in, they at least have a foundation to talk about with them and look at. So yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Is it Naviance set up to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, sort of. It would be like a tweaked assessment, basically, that we would want something to help align to the path piece. But yeah,
And there's also this piece with the new career readiness standards that are coming out as of, I want to say July 1, 2026, that they'll be implementing. We are currently looking at what that means for Naviance and shifting that. Because within Naviance, there are different activities for our counselors to do with students, and some of that includes, some of that interest surveying. But a lot of that occurs in the K-8 level as well. So there's this conversation around what that looks like at the high school level and how we are gauging career interest at that point.
Thank you. Yeah, because that sounds to me like a good way to help students discover or uncover strengths and interests that would like automatically be motivating to them. So that's one thing. Will every student be required to choose a pathway?
I would think so. We can talk about it. I think that might be a thing that we can flesh out more when we start getting stakeholder feedback. At a university level, you often have students in sort of like an undeclared, undecided, and they have some space if the courses pan out the way that we're talking about. We're kind of in 9th and 10th grade. They have a little space for exploration. But I think by the time that they graduate, they would want to have something decided. We also talked about the idea of sort of badging them in some ways on their diploma in terms of what they're interested in and kind of what they would have if you complete X, Y, and Z. And this will relate a little bit to something later with the new courses. If you complete X, Y, and Z, then you would be considered X. I can't remember what the word was. Do you remember what the word was that was on?
Well, we talked both about an endorsement on potentially their diploma or transcript, or so yes, there's because we want to challenge ourselves and our staff in terms of thinking about how do students show culminating experiences. I did a lot of work, in our project-based learning teams. In that space, we call it presentations of learning. How do we build those experiences in for students that as part of our expectations, but not necessarily create situations where it becomes a stumbling block towards graduation.
Thank you. Sorry, just a couple more. So this aligns to the things that I've been reading that our colleges are going to be looking for, which is a pathway that students are sort of know their direction, which I think is asking a lot because I did not know, certainly when I was 18, where my path led. But I think helping our kids and to navigate this before their college applications are due is really important. So I appreciate that. The other question, so that was one comment. The other question I have is it possible, or would it be possible to consider offering an alternative required course in place of geometry that might be like something real life oriented, budgetary? I know we have financial literacy in there, but like foundational skills. I'm just thinking about like what kinds of tools our kids who are maybe not college bound, but on a path to a different career might need that's not geometry. And I say that with a friend who teaches geometry, but
He's definitely watching.
So I'm just throwing that out there as sort of like, especially if there's some debate on it.
Yeah.
Just wondering if there could be a geometry or if there's one of those options.
We're still in the
Yeah.
figuring it.
Okay, sure.
Dr. Watson.
Thank you very much. This is really fascinating. And my question may be something you haven't considered yet, but I'm wondering about the role of internships and practical experience.
The next part of the presentation.
Oh, yay, anticipate that. You got it.
Read our mind.
Oh, good. And you did mention the PBL program, and I was wondering how this overlays on.
We've had some conversations, which I'm very excited about the possibilities of. I don't think we're ready to really flesh out them yet, but there are definitely some interesting and exciting ways this could.
thank you, thank you. This is super exciting and interesting and I guess I'm wondering, so a student has chosen a pathway, they know their required courses, there's a lot of room even in that 9th and 10th grade year for other courses. So then they almost kind of, when they go through to their course selection, the idea would be that instead of seeing like hundreds of courses and not knowing where to start, it's kind of pared down a little bit. And it doesn't mean you can't take a class that's outside of the pathway, but it just kind of directs them and.
Yeah, because there are so many courses that the high school offers and there's, right,
Which is awesome.
which is great. But it means sometimes there's enrollment, there's gonna be an enrollment conversation later. That doesn't always happen, but the programming is really great. And so what this does is starts to also give the potential highlight for those other areas. It both creates space for them and then also shines a light on them by narrowing down at least what they're looking at it, like the initial pass.
Like a course that they may not have seen otherwise, but is actually perfect for them.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly.
Any questions from the public? Girman.
So I'm going to take a point of privilege here. We're going to come back to these are new course proposals. The first one is AP Research, but I actually want to go to the second. We already fixed it. Thank you, Chad. And so.
But you can copy and paste.
You know what? We got you, but we were here.
This is so much prettier than the copy and paste, and I want to honor the child. I'm sorry, see, because I have pulled it up. What's that brand? I didn't think it did, but okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, I'd like to introduce the board to sophomore Ben Sampson, who's going to lead you through the first course presentation for the evening. Sure. Actually, Ben, because we're filming, if you can actually sit here.
Whenever you'd like to change slides, just let
Okay. Hello, I'm Ben. I'm a sophomore at the high school. It's very nice to see you guys. I've been wanting to meet with you guys for a while. So have the other people listed on this slide, but sadly they could not make it tonight, including our advisor, Ms. Luke. I'm here on behalf of them as I'm the student lead for the school district, and I'm also the student lead for the state as well as part of the country. So it is very nice to be here. Can you change slides? So who are the CSOs? A couple years ago, when I was in 7th grade, I got a note at the very end of the year saying I got selected for a Chief Science Officers program. I didn't know what that was, so to explain to you guys, the CSOs are known as the Chief Science Officers in grades from 6 to 12. Basically, we act as STEM ambassadors throughout the communities, or STEM liaisons, you could say, where we have action plans regarding STEM, and we do these action plans to benefit our community. You may have seen us a couple years ago doing the Cedarbrook STEM Fair, where we brought kids from, I believe it was 3rd graders from the elementary schools up to Cedarbrook, where they went through an entire circle of STEM activities where they learned a lot of stuff about physics, architecture, mechanical engineering, programming, etc., with the help of our advisor at the time, Mr. Rose and Mr. Clark. It was very fun. The kids loved it. We got great feedback on it. And this year, or at least 2 years ago, we decided to step our bounds a little bit and decided to basically challenge ourselves. And that was through following all of these goals, were cultivate a higher network of STEM leaders, foster collaboration, enrich school and community STEM culture, and amplify student voice as we are student selected. I'd like to propose to the board a following class, radio broadcasting, where, can you change slides? Here's our statement of need. Many child-named students already listen to the radio. It's on your car every day. Whether you listen to a podcast, whether you listen to Sirius XM, FM, AM, whatever, it is all based on radio, or it comes from radio signals. This class blends journalism and engineering to grow communication, problem solving, and critical thinking. As the Portrait of a Graduate survey shows, many people often do choose critical thinking as one of the main parts of the Portrait of a Graduate survey, at least I have seen through my own stance at the high school. Learn unbiased reporting and address community issues. This is already taught throughout our journalism class and TV production classes, but also through this just grows that a little more. And throughout the last couple of years, public broadcasting has been going way down. The FCC has been cracking down on public broadcasting a lot. And actually, that's why this project took so much time. It took 2.5 years just to cultivate and get to this point. So thank you. But it took 2.5 years just through the FCC red tape to get here. Plan, run, and operate radio station. So the plan, at least you'll see in future slides, is to have an internet-based radio station where you'll run kind of like Sirius XM if you think about it that way, where it'll work like a podcast but live, where people can. I'll explain later. I'll just say that. Study radio history and engineering. The history of the radio is very interesting, along with the engineering behind it. And through our own engineering classes, such as robotics, and I believe we have intro to engineering and stuff like that, it just cultivates more of that. So if you have a student on the pathway of the innovator, this right here cultivates that so much, especially if they want to go into light design, sound design, stuff like that, if they're into theatricals. And it gains those skills to create clear messages and report important district news. So let's say the 2-hour delay, like the other day. Along with the phone calls and emails, if someone's listening to the radio, and if we're putting on music 24 hours a day, likely chance they're going to listen and find out that we have a 2-hour delay. It not only just creates communication and is able to get to everybody in the community and not just, let's just say students or students' parents, it gets to everybody in the community that, hey, 2-hour delay, this is probably what's going to happen. Here's our course description. This is directly copied from the official document I was given by Ms. Mansard to, put on. But if you guys want to see the document, by the way, the link is on the slides along with our budget and estimated everything. If you guys want to see that, please do. Radio engineering course covers how radios work, how signals travel, and how to run ham and personal radios aligned with Pennsylvania Steel's engineering and technology standards. Teaches broadcasting and transmission basics and the rules that guide them. Students learn signal types, radio production, copyright, sound paths and mixing, audio set, third communication, news, reporting, commentary, and legal station operation. Work mainly will be hands-on products, so be working most likely a project-based learning course, kind of like TV production. This course builds both technical skills and the ability to entertain listeners with strong writing. Course overview. This course will take place. The course will take place over 1 semester and be worth 0.5 credits to a student's science graduate requirement. The measurement of student progress will be done with tests and products following a specified rubric determined by the teacher. Materials needed, if we need all new equipment, are stated in the following budget sheet and are a overall estimate based as September 2025. There's likely to be 2 classes over the year, each in their own semester. Projected staffing requirements include scheduled trips to the brick and mortar station, which is proposed to be the recording studio in the Elkins estate. Proposed units. I've been looking through different curriculums myself, and I've been told that you guys like proposed units. So,
Yes, we do.
if you guys want more proposed units, there's a whole separate document that delves deep into all of our other stuff that we copied directly from EDU Planet. So, introduction to radio, students will learn the basic operations of radio, the types, and the engineering behind it. Basic broadcasting. Students will cover the rules, regulations set by the FCC, and what can and cannot be broadcast over the air. Introduction to the recording studio. Students will periodically travel to the recording studio, proposed to be located inside the Elkins estate. Learn the parts of a recording studio and how to run/manage it. Otherwise, they will learn via simulations and descriptions while at school. Writing and understanding media. Students will learn how to hook an audience while writing compelling, entertaining, and informing stories to put on the air. And finally, the final unit will be radio broadcasting, where students write and perform radio shows to broadcast on the station using a story or newscast that they have personally written in the previous unit. Okay, so this is a long line of just all the steel standards that this course aligns with. If you want to read them, have fun. But this is just 3 slides of all the steel standards that this course aligns with. It took a while to get all these. Okay, student objectives. Students will be able to differentiate the types of broadcasting within radio, understand current and local issues, understand the history and evolution of the radio and its improvements, understand the rules and regulations behind broadcasting, research several unbiased sources and create a coherent and interesting news story based on a local event, explore issues in broadcasting regarding rules, regulations, and governance of the FCC, conduct an examination of several news sources to determine if the source is biased or not, understand the operations of personal, ham, and hobby radios, and produce a news segment that is to be broadcast on the air to the community. Budgeting. Okay, here's the budget sheet. The fun part. The full budget estimate can be found as a spreadsheet on the official proposal document. The estimated funding needed for all new equipment, which most likely most likely do not need all new equipment, just so you guys know. But for all new equipment and the subscription to a internet-based radio broadcaster will be a total startup cost of $3,000. Along with the maintenance of about $1,500 per year, and that is generous. $1,500 per year is saying that we have horrible mechanical issues and we got to pay $500 to get it fixed. So, budget found there. Thank you for your time. This is done on behalf of all the CSOs and our advisor, Ms. Jessica Louie. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions for Ben?
Yeah.
Ms. Plissy.
First of all, thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think I speak for myself, but I know that everybody at the board really shares. We really enjoy hearing from our students, and it's been wonderful listening to you and hearing your proposal. I just have one question, which is about transportation to the Elkins estate. And I don't know if that's a logistical issue question for somebody else, or if the budget includes transportation, or we're just thinking we're all going in somebody's car over, like, I don't, yeah. Just want to make sure we have a sort of our T's crossed and our I's dotted on that.
Yeah, so.
You want me to?
Yeah.
Want me to answer?
Thanks.
We can use school district vans. We have assistant principals and principals that are, and as well as teachers that have already been vetted as van drivers. We also, depending upon the course load and the number of students that choose to take this, we have an overall transportation budget for field trips that includes enough funds for trips like this, so that we could plot and plan for it. We have already sent students to Elkins Estate in a van driven by Dr. Callens in particular to review and take a look at the podcasting studio that is in the basement of Elkins Estate. They've been a pretty good partner in that. So we kind of were thinking through that. They didn't embed that in their budget. Their budget was more for what actually was required for the licensing fees and for the startup cost of the equipment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other board questions? Mr. Epps.
Appreciate the presentation again. Please, at any time possible, bring more students to settings. I feel like I don't want to go to the metaverse, but I feel like this is such an example of what we're talking about in the previous conversation. But focus on chief science officers. Does it also assume that we have we have the teachers to provide these courses as well, so everything is would be ready to go next year, essentially?
So I've been told.
I mean, it's impressive, and it sounds like 2.5 years of effort that have gone into this.
Wow.
I mean, and it sounds like a lot of times when things get to this board level, sometimes things aren't figured all the way out. So, again, the fact that you all have done, cross your T's and dot your I's, plenty of places. Appreciate that.
Sounds like you started your own pathway in Cedarbrook and asking to follow this sort.
So Ben and his CSOs actually did a presentation to our admin in the spring of last year, where they gave us the initial sort of proposal. Such a beautiful job. And then immediately looked at Mr. Swiger and went, so what do you think? And I was so impressed. Teenagers are, but it was incredible. They did a great job, and the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Loman.
This is more just a general question. The CSO program,
Mm-hmm.
how many students do we have who participate in it?
So far, 4.
Okay.
And I gotta say, since we only have 4 people in the program, we plan as CSOs, since we are student driven. After we graduate, we plan to have a whole new system to actually include more people. As we go to we do cabinets every season, and I help lead them, and I see like 6, maybe 8 CSOs from each school district. So, once I graduate and once that stuff happens, we will implement a new election system that has every grade from 7 or 6 to 12 in.
Thank you.
The statewide program and the IU is part of the management of it, but some of the, I think when we went to PVC last year in February, there's usually CSO students.
Yeah, there's a couple over there.
Presentations, and so, yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Ms. Blitzstein.
Just one other comment, was that maybe 2? One thing is that I am thrilled at the thought of local journalism is happening. We are in a hole. There is a giant gap where local journalism belongs, and to have our own community have truly local journalism, I think is invaluable. And I say that as somebody who consumes journalism and lives here, and I'm also a journalism educator. And I mean, this fits into media literacy so well that I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Thank you. Other board comments and questions? Muller.
I just want to say thank you, Ben. You did a great job. It was super exciting to see. And just, I mean, you're getting a taste now, I think, of what like our staff and administrators are doing behind the scenes, right? It takes a long time to develop a course. And so thank you for doing it. And as Ms. Blitzstein just said, I think I'm already connecting different dots of if, this takes off and is successful, all the different ways that, it can grow, and it won't just maybe be this one class, but there could be all kinds of other opportunities for students. So thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
Thank you.
Does Arcadia have a radio station?
They just started theirs up at the time of us coming up with this idea. We did in fact contact them about this. We actually contacted several colleges about this.
Mm-hmm.
Many were thrilled with the idea. I contacted a friend of my dad's, who is the radio director at Penn West, California.
Oh, wow.
And he gave us a lot of great information. We went to Montco. Their dean of education actually invited us back to see the radio station. It's very nice.
That's also cool.
Other board comments and questions?
Dr. White, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge Ben. He's one of my newer members on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and he pushes me each and every meeting. When I found out that he was just a sophomore, I was floored by just his presence and how he carries himself. But we're meeting tomorrow, and part of the conversation tomorrow will be exactly around this: is what do students see and want as part of their Cheltenham High School experience that we're not currently doing. We're going to have a robust conversation around that. But I'm so appreciative of Ben, and consistently we have about 45 to 50 that come from 9 to 12. And it gives me that firsthand insight from student voice, which is so powerful. So you snuck this one in on me. I didn't even know you were going to be here. And kudos to Dad, sir. Thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it. Doing a great job. So, definitely.
Mr. Bedell, yes.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Dr. Scriven brought up a really good point, which is the student-driven recommendations, right? I've been on the board, 6+ years, and I believe that this is the first time that I've heard a student-presented course offering, although I'm sure students have promoted some of the ones from the past. And just thinking about, our ability to connect student experience to actually what students want. Sounds like a relatively great place to be if I'm a student, but also as one board member. I think that's where we want to find ourselves. So I'm encouraged. And if there's opportunities for us to do more, definitely want to hear those here. And again, thank you, Ben. I know you've heard a lot around the table, but this has been great.
Then before we release you from the table, I also want you to, when you get back to Lillian, Jonathan, and Julia, tell them that we appreciate this work as well from them. This is obviously a team effort, and you are obviously a spokesperson of the collaborative kind of work you all do. Thank you for that work. Make sure that they know we appreciate them.
Oh, I will.
Thank you. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you.
You got it? Good. You're not here.
Back arrow.
You mean?
Yeah, hit back, just hit the back arrow multiple times.
It's only cool.
85 napkin.
Yeah.
So,
I took the opportunity for a cookie break.
Oh, my. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good. Quite all right. So we have 3 additional courses. 2 of them, they all serve different purposes. The next one for consideration by the board is AP Research. The board has previously approved AP Seminar, which is the first of 2 courses in the AP Capstone program. We currently are running 1 section of AP Seminar this year, with anticipation of running a larger section next year or an additional section next year. Currently, every student who's taking AP Seminar is a 9th grader. So our anticipation is that we will be offering AP Research next year to that group as 10th graders. And then as we look at how this fits within our program guide, AP Seminar would be something that's open to students below being a senior, because you need to take AP Seminar before you take AP Research, and then AP Research would be open to anybody who's not a freshman. We do have some gifted considerations involved in this course, and both of these courses, because we are using them as a way of meeting students' needs in their GIEPs, which is where the current 9th grade group is coming from. But next year we are anticipating having a mixed group of students, 10th, 11th, and 10th and 11th, not 12th, in that AP Seminar class. Then running this with one single section of AP Research next year approved, and then having a broader group of students the following year. This will enable our students to earn the AP Capstone Diploma, if so interested. The AP Capstone Diploma is a diploma issued, an endorsement issued by College Board, in which if a student completes requirements in AP Seminar and AP Research and then earns a 3 or higher in 4 additional AP classes, they earn that endorsement. Mr. Whiting, I see your head nod there. If this had been offered to the class of 2025, there were 92 students who took 4 or more AP classes in that graduating class. So those are 92 students. If it had been programmed into their experience as presumably more of the 9, 10, 10, 11 range, that would have potentially been able to take advantage of that endorsement. And so AP Research for your consideration.
Is there an AP Research exam?
So it is, yes, there is an exam. It's a mixed presentation portfolio, both the seminar and research. Those 2 courses are different because they're trying to strengthen students' skills, as opposed to almost every other one of them, which is how much content can you absorb and work with. And so, yes, there is it's a mixed portfolio process.
Got it. Okay. AP research class, they would pick an area of study and they would literally go through and
The whole-
research it over the course of the year. They would have to potentially get IRB approval, which is wild. Yeah, it was just a whole thing. And then they do a presentation, they write a paper, and then their AP exam score comes from those two components.
Dr. Watts.
What are the methodologies that kids are going to be exposed to here? I'm thinking back to the values that were listed at the beginning and the focus on social justice. So I'm considering whether we'd have students interested in participatory action research, the kind of community-based collective voice, ethnography, those kinds of approaches.
Absolutely.
So I used to teach AP seminar, which is also part of my assignment. And AP research was my counterpart taught after me. So the way that the seminar course works is there's sort of two components to it, and you would have heard about this last year or year before. But you have the first half of the year is very skills heavy, and it's a really sort of strange experience for a lot of students who are taking it because they're used to like doing school and being this grade A high level.
For instance, I actually went in and observed the class in action today, and they were preparing to do a 6 to 8 minute presentation.
Yeah. And so it is entirely skills based. And so what happens though in the spring is there's two projects. The first one is a group project where the students can pick an area of focus. And so in terms of methodology or process and research that they would do, they have some space to make some decisions in there. And then the second process in AP project and AP seminar is based on a series of what they're called stimulus materials that are provided by College Board, and they're always around a certain theme. And so there's a huge variety of different types of writing, presentation, video, poetry, scientific article. Sometimes there is, I remember one of the years that I taught it, there was, I'm trying to remember what the common theme was, I think was around loss. And the idea, one of the articles was an ethnographic study of communities that lose language as their elders die out all over the world. And basically it doesn't matter. Was kind of the grand thesis of the paper. So they are exposed to a bunch of variety. And then in AP research, they have a ton of choice in terms of what area they want to focus on, what they want to study. It gets difficult because of their age and their ability to kind of communicate and collect research. Oftentimes they tend to choose to research where they are in school. And so then that gets a little bit more complicated. But they do have a lot of space, and part of the skill set that they're learning is around making some of those decisions around what kind of research options exist, what sort of ideas might you study, how might you collect that information, how you might present that information. So that's the content of the course, if you will. So yeah, it's very cool. What they come up with is incredible. We're very impressed by them and all of his wonderful skills. You would see something very similar coming out of the AP research, AP seminar classes. Anytime that we did them, we were always kind of floored by what kids could do.
Are there any questions and comments?
Former AP seminar teachers.
So now so the next one is to create the as Ms. Girman indicated earlier, we are looking to move environmental science to 9th grade as part of our efforts to meet the STEEL standards. And in doing that, we don't currently have an environmental science honors class. And so in order to provide the support for students that students need, we're proposing to add an environmental science honors class that would go with the revised environmental science class that'll be in 9th grade. We are also anticipating having an upper level environmental science class that will cover things that are not in that more environmental ecology class. We have a previously approved environmental engineering class, which we are planning on offering that will be that second environmental option once students have gone through this experience. And then what was foreshadowed earlier, internship. As we're looking at making the PATS as real world as possible, we've had an internship class on the books at the high school, and it's been offered in a couple of different ways. what we did this year is we actually took 2 existing courses and created a kind of like a 2-step process that we're now kind of putting in front of you, because we've run it and we kind of think it works. We're still tweaking it. We're going to review it at the end of this year. But what we did this year is we took one of these senior internship classes that are existing, and it's an every other day class, so it's a minor. And we're running it this fall. We're running it looking at college and career readiness standards. So students are going through a variety of experiences, some of which are in our diversified occupations program. And they're going through a variety of experiences, kind of look at their interests, look at their needs, build up their skills, they're doing some industry certifications in there. And they're getting assistance in finding their internship, both student-led and staff-supported. And so that's the fall piece. And then in the spring, we are issuing for every 120 hours of work, we're issuing 1 credit. Right now, all of our interns this coming spring, and I believe we have about 20 that are confirmed. We have 8 that are kind of, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And that was purposely part of this design. It was designed so that students could have this fall experience, be a meaningful experience. But if things didn't work out, if we couldn't find the right placement for them, if things changed in their lives, that they still have that positive experience, have that half credit, and then do something else in the spring. Whether that's dual enrollment, whether that's a different club, whatever it might be, they're still having an opportunity to have a quality educational experience and not being like, oh my God, I have to complete this. But providing the structure so that they can complete that. And so we're very excited about the opportunities that are here. Right now, we have several students that are going to be placed in Cheltenham schools. Things that we're looking at those types of students for next year is, through dual enrollment, is there an experience that we can give them through a Monco class where they're all enrolled in the same Monco class so that they're having that same common conversation with a professor as they're then going and doing experiences with us here. So those are the type of things that we're excited to think about, as we're looking at these paths, where can we make those logical connections and give our seniors a quality, spring experience. I do want to point out, and we don't have any students doing it right now. I thought somebody was going to take up an offer from Judge Tolliver, but they haven't. This does create the opportunity for, if students are looking at, what could be a whole day or a half day experience, we can scale this up. So if it is, if we can get to 240 hours, we can issue the 2 credits and we can get to 3, so if it's if a student has programmed their way to be at a specific spot, this can help accommodate that. And so formally presenting a kind of revised 1.5 credit, internship experience. We did quietly run it this year using existing courses, and we're getting good feedback from the students so far.
Or questions or comments? Yes, please.
I actually just have a question about the environmental science. First, are the materials different from the regular or non-honors selection?
It's up to the teachers to kind of write because it hasn't existed. So they don't have to be. So part of the conversation that Mr. Giuseppio, who's the science department chair, and I had was what typically makes the difference between the honors and the non-honors courses. And it's that topics are covered at a high level of challenge. Students should expect more independent and inquiry-based laboratory investigation. So in that inquiry-based laboratory investigation, you might see some difference of materials and then the long-term projects. So in that space, there could be, but that's to be written once.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, and we wanted to make sure that students, if it's going to become a required course, the conversation was making sure that students could all access it at whichever level makes the most sense for them. So having only the on-level or the AP option could kind of keep some students feeling a little either unchallenged or overly challenged. So we wanted to make sure that there was a middle lane.
Other questions or comments? Dr. West.
Back to the internship, me and I are doing ping pong tonight. Is there room here for students to select their own, to find and generate their own?
I would say we're probably about 50% of the students.
Yeah, the hiccup that we've run into is just in terms of age of the student. Technically, students who are under the age of 18, the employer or the person that they're working with And so that becomes a little bit of the difficulty sometimes, is whether or not the employers want to do that one.
And so far, we've had that, but again, we're dealing with a group of 20 to 28, at scale. That certainly is a consideration that we'll have to be watching.
I'm really glad to hear that you're building this out. My son did one. He did not know this was an option. I found it, of course, worked really well for him in senior year and helped him on the track that he's on now. And so I'm really glad to hear this has been built out.
Other questions or comments? Sir Williams.
I have a broader question that maybe could be answered here. So just thinking about what I'm hearing, right, which is research, I'm hearing internship, I'm hearing Ben's presentation for our radio experience, and I'm thinking about those courses specifically, but struggling because I'm also thinking about the rest of all of the classes at the high school, and the individual components are great, but I'm curious about how we are weaving any of these concepts into the remaining course load, right? Because there's an aspect of the high school experience that I gather is becoming less and less lecture and more of what I hear us talking about today. And so it's, again, broader question, but thinking about where we started, with PBL some years ago and how we've, evolved to what we have today, and even inclusive of what we heard today. I'm curious, like, how do we do this in all of the classes? What I'm asking.
So you're asking about project-based learning kind of ideas in all of the classes, or?
Yeah, so like just we're talking about the evolution of where we have new standards, we have curriculum being built at multiple levels, and there's expectations around what they look like, but the vision for me is not somebody standing in front of a classroom and delivering information. It sounds a lot like what I've heard today. And so I'm curious if are we moving in that direction? Can we? And if I'm asking a question that doesn't have to be answered right now, I'm actually okay with that too. But I'm genuinely curious about that. Clearly, there's a lot of other reasons why.
Yeah, I think that we are attempting to move into a space where we give our students more experiential learning and also help them to delve deeper into rigorous learning tasks through how we're structuring the courses and then how we're sequencing the courses. The world is changing rapidly, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge that for our students. Our students also are learning differently. We have started also to norm around what we think effective instruction looks like here in the school district through our instructional rounds, because we want to make sure that we're all collectively as educators on the same page around what it is that we think our students are going to need in terms of skill sets moving forward. So when you think about the portrait of the graduate work, coupled with and paired with the instructional rounds work, because the instructional rounds are really about the pedagogy, the how you teach. The curriculum work and the course catalog is around what you teach. I like to think about it as a three-legged stool, because we need to know what we want to teach, how we want to teach it, and for what outcome. And that is the work that we're trying to do now in these different realms and moving all in the same direction, of course, aligned with what the strategic plan had given us.
Yeah, it's awesome because we are evolving, right? We know that we are building curriculum. We know high quality instructional materials are here. Like all these things are happening in real time, right? And so I'm thinking about what I'm hearing, and it sounds like we're moving in the direction of what I think was defined some years ago as like 21st century learning. I don't know, not in education professionally, but I know that's a broad statement to me. But I just keep hearing some very similar themes, and if I'm reflecting on the high school experience that I know I had and looking at what I know now, I would have loved to have done more cool stuff like I've heard us doing and seeking to do. And I think that there's a bunch of students who probably agree with me today. And so I think about that in terms of engagement, right? I think about that in terms of the overall school experience. And I'm encouraged by that. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that.
Thinking about it in terms of access, because we want to make sure that all students have access to these different types of learning experiences. We want to make sure too that, you know, even if you have a plan to support you through a 504 or learning disability or something of the sort, that you have the opportunity to engage in this work as well. Because honestly, all students will engage in this work when they need us. So we need to make sure that they have the opportunity and to experience that root, and also to experience what it is to have teachers that teach in different ways and different learning styles being addressed in the same classroom. I'm sure, like, as I'm now moving into my, I guess, year and a half point, I really think that when you have effective instruction and kids know what they're learning and why they're learning it, like there's a joy factor that returns back to the schools. And we have definitely been thinking about that. Kids should want to come to school.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying as well. Yeah. All right, good. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. That's, again, I know it was not necessarily on topic, but just thinking about pathways and thinking about portrait of a graduate, right? All of those things start to visually represent themselves. Like, what does it actually look like? And it sounds like we're thinking through that and developing where we go. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
One of the surprising pieces so far that we've gotten from portrait of a graduate, which again we'll talk more about, but we have about almost 750 student responses from grade 6 through 12 on it, and almost 50% of them picked creativity, which was so cool to see. I was shocked. That was not what came from, respectfully, didn't come from adults at all. That's not where anybody said in any of the adult conversation. But about 50% of our students picked creativity as something they would like to portrait or graduate, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It speaks to what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if creativity was woven into all of my high school experience. So I'm hearing that and I'm combining my thoughts. So I appreciate that, because I'm glad that the students are reflecting exactly what I've been thinking, not as one person specifically, but just generally. I like that, and I like that we're listening for that.
How's it going, everybody? I just want to continue on the conversation. Every year we meet around March or April to talk about, you know, the fact that we have so many courses running and the difficult decisions that we have to make, because when a class is under 15, we, you know, sometimes we'll run it, sometimes we won't run it, depending on staffing and the number of sections that we need to offer. So while we're doing all of this and having all these different options to go through, we wanted to take this time now to share with you where we are with the courses that are running that are at 15 or below, explain a couple things on those, and to kind of set up the conversation that we're going to have later after we do requests in January, February, to let you know where we are and which courses we may be offering for the following school, 26, 27. So I'm going to go through the different departments, and I highlighted a few just to explain the rationale on them. So in the business department, yes, there's an honors accounting class that is running under 15. However, it runs at the same time as regular accounting. So together, it is not a class that is under 15. And so in certain cases like that, we will still run a course. We'll also still run a course if a teacher's, let's say it's a business teacher and we need to fill up the schedule. We're not going to just give them a random class. We'd rather give them a class within that area if we can keep students getting that option. In English, our AP English Literature class is under 15, as well as our drama class. I will add that the drama teacher is also our reading specialist. And so like, as I just said, you know, sometimes you'll have a course that will fill us a teacher's schedule. So a half credit will fill out and give the teacher a full teaching load. And so we'd rather run a class that students would want to take and have interest in, even if it's under that 15 requirement. We just started running sewing and fashion too, so that is still growing. So our students that are taking sewing and fashion will move on. So that number is anticipated to grow as we go on, but that is a class that is currently running under the 15. Same thing in the AP Calc BC class, AP Computer Science, which is always every other year hit or miss because of the number of students that are taking. We've been growing our computer science options. So they can take the AP Computer Science A, which is more language specific, it's learning Java, versus the AP Computer Science Principles, which is more hands-on and like the theory and the concepts of coding. And then our Calc 2 honors, which is also a class that students get to. And we've even talked about whether looking at that as a dual enrollment opportunity or still offering the course. But we had room in the teacher schedule in the math department, so why not offer the course that we had students that was interested in taking? In music, we have advanced choral studies, but I have to add that this year we created a ninth grade choir. A ninth grade choir class that's running at the same time as that advanced choral studies. The advanced choral studies, I believe it's more the students that are leading like our a cappella groups. And so they're in there working on that while the ninth grade choir is also working. So it's providing an additional opportunity that for students that wouldn't have had that opportunity if we didn't run the course. Same thing with AP Music Theory. And I only put for concert choir A and select chamber A. Those are our first semester classes because with the way our schedule is running in the second semester, those sections kind of bump back up. Especially in the select chamber, our teacher allowed two students to take a different class in the beginning of the year so that they could expand their opportunities. And then they're taking it in the second half of the year. So the class goes back over the 15 requirement. Project-based learning. Individually, the sections, and you'll see, English 9, non-honors, US History 1, and the US History 1 honors, the English 11 with the US History 2, English 10 and Chemistry H, and then the Biology honors. They are running sections that are under 15, but those classes are combined. So English 9 and 9H, and well, actually, your English, your history, and your biology classes, the kids are all together, all three of them during that period of time. But those numbers are low from what we would want them to be. Swimming for Beginners was a course that was designed to be small in nature. Yes, our requirement is 15, but for safety reasons, we want to have that around 12 if we can, just to make sure that the teacher is with them because there is not a second teacher in the room that is also set as a lifeguard. So that teacher, that is by design. AP Physics, when we talk about physics, we have 2 physics teachers in the high school. And so again, same thing with building out their schedules. Each year it kind of changes based on the requests that are made by the students on whether we'll add an extra physics class or we'll allow like the AP Physics 1 to run. Usually AP Physics C is one that consistently runs, but it depends on the request that we get each year from our students. And then in our STEM classes, that is also an area where by sections they are down. But the advanced structural design, and I should have highlighted that, and structural design and testing are courses that run at the same time. So while, again, you look at our numbers and those numbers in individual sections look like they're under, when they are combined, it brings you back to that number, which is why we continue to run it. And again, rather run a class in that area if students are interested than just give a random other assignment to a teacher. World language. I highlighted the Latins, of course, because this year our students are taking those digitally. But those numbers are low. In fact, because as students get higher in the world language, they start to turn into more singletons, meaning we only have one section. Sometimes it's a double course and we'll have 2 sections running, but those courses usually run because students have put in that much time and work to get to that level. But the numbers are usually below our 15 requirement to have a course run. And then I highlighted Art 3 with Unified Arts, but that also runs at the same time as our students that are taking AP art drawing. So again, while it may appear that that section is low, it is running with the AP class. And so it's almost like those students are getting like a 2-year AP class. And then they put forth their projects. So that's that part. I can go through questions if you want to go, or I can keep going. It's up to you guys.
Any board questions on those parts? Just please.
Can you go back to the? Yeah. So I don't know, I have feelings about, Calc BC specifically and all the music courses, all the music courses. I mean, I know that there's only so many time slots in a kid's schedule, and that we do have kids who want to take this, but it's offered at the same time as this. And so like there's only so many hours in the day. But I worry, especially hearing that our kids are overwhelmingly voting for creativity as a pillar, that we would take those opportunities away.
Can I jump in?
Yes, yeah.
So my opinion with the AP Calc BC, that might be competing with some of the dual enrollment too, when you're getting to that level. Because I think right now the design of the course, the teacher of the course, it's a perfect fit. And so we have like a good setup with that. But I think that that's pretty much the only reason why that one might be down right now, because it's not always, this would not have been always been like a consistent one on my list. But when we go to the music, Advanced Choral Studies is not a course that we really have been offering over the last several years. So the fact that we're offering is putting another opportunity on the table for students. But it also goes to, we have 2.3 music teachers at the high school, and that number could go up. Hint, board. But it has been a question and a comment over the years, going back to when Jenny Hutton was the department chair instead of Matt Bernstein. AP Music Theory, again, that was always a class similar to like the AP Computer Science A, that you didn't always have numbers, but it was an option that we really wanted to offer our kids. And so the teachers made a way to make it work in one of the 2 semesters, so that they would be giving students that opportunity. We also offer beginner guitar. And when an intermediate guitar is down, it's because beginner guitar is up. And then it kind of changes. And again, going back to the hint, 2.3 music teachers. It was always like that conversation when I was the master scheduler with the teachers on, do we actually set up a semester 1, semester 2 offerings for kids, or as we used to when we offered AP Micro and AP Macro Economics, do you set it up a beginning of every other year offerings so that you maximize the offerings? But when we're offering everything, there's those choices that you can take. Yes.
So the Calc BC, just one comment around that, and that is that my current college freshman who is taking it, I don't know what math 1070 means, if anybody knows what that means, but said he was really grateful to have taken Calc BC because he was prepared for this course in ways that other kids in the course were not prepared for who hadn't taken that. And so I just don't want to have kids who are, you know, working at that level not be prepared for the next thing. So
And that one, and the reason why I say that one's usually
Yeah.
not on the list is because that also pairs with our physics classes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say physics is also another one I know is some kind of cyclical in terms of you can have 3 kids or you can have 10 kids. But I second that.
And then my other question, sorry, was on the next slide about all of the PBL. Like, these are required courses currently, or no?
The
PBL is not.
PBL itself is not,
Courses.
but the, yeah.
So this is like that PBL branch. Students will choose to be in the 9th grade, 10th
Right.
grade, 11th grade PBL, which was why part of the reason why we didn't have the 12th grade running so that we can focus on growing 9th, 10th, and 11th.
So my question is, are our PBL numbers down? Oh, okay.
And that's part of conversations that Mr. Hoff and I have been having about how to try to rectify some of that. And so some of the conversations with the Panther Paths is around what are those paths that might make sense to say, hey, if you're interested in this thing, you're an innovator, this kind of course for English, math, science, or English, science, services might make a lot of sense for you. So that's also part of that conversation too.
Is PBL right now a sort of self-contained program still? As opposed to being a teaching strategy and methodology that's integrated across the curriculum?
Yes. Which is a big conversation that we've been having.
The way to that.
Ms. Muller.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hammond. I heard you just start to speak to this a little bit, like the historical considerations. And I know that I shouldn't assume anything, I should ask. When we're looking at this, and I know this will come back up later in the spring, and just because a course is not run next year doesn't mean it doesn't run the following year. It is based on interest and all those things. But I guess I'm wondering, based on historically what we know, like, are there classes maybe that used to be like, you know, packed to the brim and now are not? Like, you know, I mean, maybe not, I have no idea. And I know COVID, all kinds of things, there's so many impacts. So I guess I'm thinking about that. Like, are there maybe, I know you kind of alluded that there's some courses that it'll be light one year, but then the next year it's back up again, and some, you know, cycles with that. So I'm just kind of thinking about that. And I'm also thinking about this idea of, and you alluded to this too, of some courses are offered every other year. And if you went to a small undergraduate school like I did, you knew that ahead of time. Like and so I'm thinking of those pathways, or, you know, Panther Paths, and thinking if you're in this pathway and you want to take this, oh, look, this is a course you're probably going to want to take, but this is only offered on spring of odd years. I don't know. Like, and I don't know if that's too advanced or too detailed that we can't get to it, but I'm just curious if there's a way to not lose some of these, especially those higher level courses. I don't know.
If I could just add, we, in fact, AP Music Theory, we told the students up front in January that we were going to run it this year, and we are not running it.
Okay, so that is, I guess I was just curious if that was happening, because I know that's a way to be able to still offer it, and students know. I had another question, but I lost it. So if I get back to it,
So
thank you.
I can't say that there's an actual pattern.
Yeah.
This course is like what you're saying.
Okay.
I think it's part of what they're doing with creating the different pathways. Will fix kind of how we have scheduled,
Okay.
where every year our schedule is based on the requests, and based on those requests that could be all over the place, we're determining the number of sections here and there, and that's making those difficult decisions. But students are picking courses not necessarily on, I really want this. They're picking courses on, oh, that sounds good. Or someone else is telling them, oh yeah, you know, you just got to you got to fill this slot right here. Let's just put this right in the slot. And then they want to change schedules.
Right.
But then we don't have the sections that change schedules, you know. So I think it will fix some of that, and then we'll have a more consistent type of offerings as we move forward if we're scheduling and we're doing the request in the correct way. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Other board questions and comments? Ms. Blitzings.
One more, and that is, when I was a student in CHS, everyone was required to take swimming in 10th grade. Is that still a requirement?
That is not a requirement. It would, I think, I don't know when But I remember it was part of our phys ed curriculum, like that ninth grade.
Right.
They did like a rotation in swimming. That's no longer a requirement. So this is students that elect to take that swimming
Got it.
course.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, we'll keep going. So some other considerations that we have, and I kind of talked about this a little bit when I presented the last time, but talking about at the end of that first market period and looking at where we were and kind of where we're going and, you know, all the work that we're doing at the high school, looking at this year's D's and F students that got a D and F at the end of that first marking period. So 482 students had a D or an F, and they held 929 Ds and Fs. If I look at that from where we were last year at the first marking period, 10% less students had a D or an F, and they held 19% less students. If I take that back to 2 years ago before I was in my role, it was a 27% less students had a D or an F, and they are carrying 37% less Ds and Fs. And these numbers right now is even with us increasing the grading requirements of having every class for consistency purposes have their grading set up of 70% summative, 30% formative. And they're still doing that, which also speaks to the research that students will raise to the expectations that you set up upon them. And if I take that further, of those 482 students, which is 36% of the school, so 36% of the school had that D or an F, only 221 were failing more than one class, so one class or more. 91 students were failing more than two classes, which was 19% of that 482. When I'm presenting all that in areas for us to kind of look at and to kind of address our attention on, you know, moving forward at the moment, just under 62% of the students that had Fs came from these four areas, and it wasn't picked to blame anything in these areas because there's reasons for everything. And you can find multiple reasons, but within our English department, half the Fs, which totaled about 16%, came from students sitting in English 10 and 11. Before I even keep going, because I don't want it to seem like I'm saying it's these areas, our perception data even spoke to the fact that students don't find what they're learning to be relevant. And if you're not interested and you're not engaged, you know, you're not buying into what's being put down. And so, again, the conversation that we started off with and the new courses that we are putting forward and speaking exactly to what you were talking about on the different options that are on the plate for today's students, we're finding ways of trying to better the experience for our students, okay? So looking at how we're doing, what we're doing in English 10 and 11, our Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, which are is a brand new curriculum. So there's always going to be that change factor with that. Our government class, about half the Fs came in that, it was just under half from the government. And same thing with world language. The majority of the Fs in world language came from that Spanish 1 class, which means we need to look at how we're introducing our students to the language. Because if they're having an issue at that first level, of course, they're going to have issues at the next level, which is going to bring us back to what we saw on the previous slides, that when they're getting to the further up levels, we're having less students enrolled. So those are areas that my admin team needs to work with our department chairs to push into the PLCs to have those conversations on how we're changing things up to continue making things better for our students, as well as providing these different pathways, providing the different courses. And then, as you said earlier, Mr. Bedell Williams, making sure that our teachers are teaching differently for our students and providing those different opportunities for them to learn. But I want to end on a positive note, that also at the end of that first marking period, 49% of Cheltenham High School students, 48% if we're including all of our students at Epic, earned a 3.2 GPA or higher and were recognized for being on honor roll. So while those numbers are like, whoa, what's going on? Our students are performing. And for our students to get up honor roll, and the amount of conversations I had with students and parents saying, wait a minute, look at my grades, why didn't I get honor roll? And then we did the math together and they realized they just missed it. That number would have been even higher. And so and then can you go back a couple slides? Right there, go back. 36% of our student population had the D or an F, which also means that the opposite did not have a D or an F. So our students are performing well. They're doing well in school. And so I want to recognize that, not just point this part out. But this is things that I have to point out because there are things that we need to focus upon to continue in making that experience better for all students.
Board questions and comments? Ms. Loman.
The students, the number of students failing 2 or more courses, 93 students. I'm sure we can drill down, like how many of those students have IEPs? How many of them are boys? Kind of do all of that. Like I'm curious, you know, I'm sure we're looking at kind of the whole makeup of that group, but yeah, I'm really curious.
What I can tell you off the top of my head was that out of all the students that had a D or an F, I believe it was 36% had an IEP. And students with an IEP, I believe, make up 27% of my population. So that was a conversation that I had with the staff at our last faculty meeting on things that we also need to address and take into consideration.
So 36% of that 482 have an IEP.
No. Oh, yeah, of the 482, yes.
Right,
Yes,
482,
yes.
yes. So that same number, there were, the 482 is 36% of the population, and 36% of the 482 have special education.
Yes.
And that's a conversation that we have in the MTSS meetings, where we're looking at, so one of the early warning system reports that we run after each marking period is the number of students who are failing multiple classes. And that report starts getting run about a month less, about halfway through the marking period is when we start pulling grades and having those conversations too. And students who are failing 2 or more classes are getting flagged to look at, because oftentimes what happens too is that you'll see that there's also attendance and/or behavior. It tends to be a multi-pronged sort of area of concern. So there's that. MTSS is spending lots of time with the 91.
Other board questions or comments? Questions or comments?
I was going to add, because I said the 27% have an IEP or a 504.
Or a 504.
So that includes the 504 and 503.
It's both of those. That's what.
Questions and comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. I do want to take a moment to thank the administrators who are here tonight for putting this work together. It is a Tuesday night before a holiday break, and it can be chaotic in your places of work. And so we thank you very much for being here with us this evening to look at this very important work. With that, I want to wish everybody who is listening online, all 3 people, a safe and happy season. Have a safe and happy holiday break. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So moved.
okay.
Second. Adjourn.